Hello. Hello, Rio.
Thank you.
Bom dia. What? Bom dia. Okay. My name is Alain, and I want to start by talking about the Beatles. Okay, the Beatles, everyone goes crazy about the Beatles. The Beatles are always number one when you see the lists of the top bands in the world. They're viewed as creative geniuses. You know, they took the world by storm, leaving the UK and coming to the US. Beatlemania was a rage. There are even knights, they're Sir Cartney and Sir Ringo Starr. People have tattoos on their body of the Beatles. They're actually like national or international holidays for the Beatles. UNESCO has a day for the Beatles. There's a Cirque du Soleil show. There's Lego toys about the Beatles. The Beatles are everywhere. A lot of people say the impact of the Beatles, not only on rock and roll, but on all of Western culture, is simply incalculable. People look at the Beatles like creative visionaries that have set the chart for the rest of music, for generations, for pop culture, for boy bands, for international trade. The Beatles are viewed as everything. My question to you, was it really creative genius, or was it actually just about great timing? And I want to talk about that today. I call that peak innovation, sort of the moment when a new idea comes and hits the cultural appetite, the individual desire, and the technological moment to take off. Because I argue that the Beatles would not have been successful if not for certain conditions, which I'll get to in a second. First, my name is Alain. I run a strategy and design consultancy. Check us out. It's called sylvain.co. Now, creativity. Creativity is highly valued. It's considered a super asset in our culture today. Everyone holds it up. You've got hundreds and thousands of books about creativity in business, creativity and in self-help. You have apps that are all over the place that help you just create things over and over again. People identify themselves as creative. They say, what do you do? They say, I'm a creative. Creativity is everywhere. There are awards, creativity awards, big awards, small awards, digital awards, advertising awards. Creativity is often talked about as just this special gift. And we sort of forgive creative geniuses. We love creativity as a culture so much that sometimes we'll overlook the problems of character, of creative geniuses. What does that mean, that we prize creativity above character or morality or ethics? 95% of US teachers believe creativity is a valuable skill set for students' futures. 72% of US parents said creativity was especially important to teach children. 65% of CEOs said creativity skills were very important, ahead of emotional intelligence and digital skills. Creativity is more important than emotional intelligence? I run a creative agency. We make stuff. Creativity is very important to what we do. I believe creativity is very important, but I think as a culture, we may have overinflated the power of creativity at all costs. In the world of business, creativity comes to life in this concept that we call innovation. What do you, in Portuguese, inovação? Inovação, is that how you say it? Innovation, okay? That is sort of the idea of new products, making things that people want. That's how you see it. And we know there are tons of things in culture and business. New things are pumped out all the time. NFTs, AI, it's just we can't keep up. Bitcoin. The amount of money that businesses spend on research and development is crazy, okay? $2.5 trillion projected investments in research and development. Companies are trying to, inovação, countries are trying to innovate like crazy. They're spending tons and tons of money. And if you look in the United States, the amount of patent applications, so these are the applications where people are claiming a new invention or a new technology, it's increasing like crazy. There are over 3 million people, almost 4 million people in 2021 who claim to have a unique invention. That's millions and millions of ideas. We're in a gluttonous moment of invention. If you go on LinkedIn right now and you look at people's job titles that have the word innovation in the inovação in the title, it's 457,000 people say they work in innovation. It's even big companies are talking about innovation. Disney says that the heart and soul of the company is creativity and innovation. Have we really seen a return on all this creativity? We've invested so much energy, so much love. We change our titles. We call ourselves creative. Have we, as a culture, real question, have we seen a return on this investment in creativity? And you can probably tell where I'm going. You know, you look at the iPhone and the invention of the iPhone. These minor changes over 10 years, truthfully, that product hasn't significantly changed in over 10 years. By its very nature, every innovation leads to something new, but not every new thing is an innovation. So we have to realize that we're not actually getting a return on all this creative energy. I mean, look at fashion. In the world of fashion, we're just repeating the same ideas from 20 or 30 years ago. It's a cycle. It's like that in music. It's like that in film. Look at the top movies right now. They're all old movies that came back. Okay, they're not new ideas. They're not new concepts. You know, a lot of people talk about innovation theater. Any initiative undertaken with the promise of innovation, but that doesn't create real business or societal impact. We as a culture are performing innovation. We're not actually achieving innovation, is my argument. The rate of disruptive tech and science discoveries has slowed over the decades. There's research that shows that the amount of patents and science discoveries has actually decreased in recent years. That in spite of all this creativity, in spite of this creative boom and Apple and Elon Musk and we're going to the moon, we're actually not inventing and doing nearly as much as we did in the past. And Silicon Valley is the most guilty of this concept because they claim to constantly do new stuff. They're raising money on the idea that we're first, but of the 72 unicorns, only 6 of them are profitable. It's a kind of a tragedy if you think about it. So creativity alone doesn't guarantee success. For me, it's actually about timing. Creativity is important, and we should value creativity as a society, but we should also pay attention in the actual moment. What do people want right now? What does culture need right now? 42% of startup success can be attributed to timing. Above team, above business plan, timing is the most important idea when you launch a concept. And I'll tell you why. As human beings, we are a species of timing. We live and breathe in the concept of timing. We actually, our whole biology is about timing, the circadian rhythm that sets the daily backbeat, the backbeat of every creature's life. Our heart beats according to time. Our all sorts of cycles work according to time. We are a species that needs timing. And all of these concepts that we see that are trying to be successful, but they are too soon, that's part of the prematurity thesis, the idea that some scientific discoveries have less impact because they come before their time and can't be fully understood. Think about it. Have you ever been here? This is in Tokyo, in Shibuya in Tokyo. This intersection is all about timing. These could be ants. These could be insects or birds. We as a species need time to understand our place in the world. And the same applies to creativity and innovation. How about in sports? It's like 80% timing and 20% power. Why do I need power hitting when I can clear the ropes with timing? Sports is all about timing, actually. Of course, it's about achievement. And I will point out my hero, Pelé. It was actually about timing. You know, his move, the runaround move, which is considered one of the greatest football moves ever, audaciously executed and called for immense skill, timing, judgment, and speed. The way he moved with the ball was actually more impressive than his strength, than his accuracy. It was the timing that he had. And in the other parts of culture, you think about comedy. What makes something funny? It's actually about the perfect timing of the joke. It's about the perfect pause that you wait for it. In music, you think about rhythm, the placement, which is actually the placement of sound and time. It's about timing because we as a species relate to time. Do you know this song? Can you hear it? Can you hear the song? Okay, this song was a huge deal when I grew up. And people were like, why was it so successful? And it's because there's a drum solo in this song that is fucking crazy. It builds up, it's coming, and you can't wait for the execution, and then it comes in like this. This shit was crazy, okay, in the 80s. That executed timing, and because as a species, we need to understand things relative to timing. By the way, have you ever seen this YouTube video of these guys listening to that song for the first time? They hear it and they lose their mind. It's actually really funny. You should check it out. So anyway, creativity is important. But timing, I argue, is more important than creativity. That you can't just have creativity alone. That I think creativity alone is a sort of like collective masturbation. That you need timing to take a step back, understand its place, and really invest in its value. And that takes me back to the Beatles. Would the Beatles have been super successful if not for the fact that television was penetrated at the highest level at that point, 70 million homes? Would their media message had not been as powerful if not for television in the late 50s and 60s, or radio and the infrastructure that supported these songs being duplicated around the world? Would the Beatles exist if not for that technological innovation? Or how about newspapers and prints that were exoticizing this idea of this British band and their mania, reproduced in the same way around the world? Don't the Beatles have a lot to thank when it comes to technology? And how about the individual appetite, the cultural moments? You had young people around the world who were trying to differentiate themselves from their post-World War II parents. They were looking for meaning. They were looking for independence. And it was at a time the birth control pill was just released. Martin Luther King just did his famous speech. They were rebellion. They were exoticism. The cultural appetite needed the Beatles more than the Beatles were a creative genius. They just seized the moment, and people embraced it. People needed it. They filled a void. And make no mistake, they were not first. They were not first. The Beatles actually played Black American music in this copied the songs, but played them differently. Little Richard, Chuck Berry, they just replicated that stuff. There was nothing unique in Twist and Shout when the Beatles played it. And there are tons of examples of these songs of the Beatles replicating. This is a hot take. Not everyone likes when I talk about the Beatles. And how about Girl from Ipanema that seized a moment, a bossa nova moment in the world with Stan Getz? People wanted that exotic exposure. Bossa nova had existed before and after, but that moment, it hit a peak innovation. The moment when forces are perfectly aligned for a new or undervalued concept, invention, or business to achieve maximum cultural impact. Peak innovation. That's what we should be looking for. Not just innovation, peak innovation. And for me, it comes down to three things. Number one, the cultural climate. Is the culture really ready for this? Do they want this? Do we as a collective identity need this? Individual appetite. How about as a person? How you identify and what you need. Does it solve for that? And then innovation infrastructure. Does the technology actually deliver and build off things that we saw before? When those three things are met, that's peak innovation. And I'll give you some examples. The elevator existed for over 100 years before it was actually accepted. And that's because it solved the cultural climate, but it didn't solve the individual appetite or the technological infrastructure. Google Glass, which we often make fun of, had neither. It came out way earlier than it should have. Or the Pebble, the wearable technology, it had some things, but not everything. That actually the Pebble and the Apple Watch that we wear today is not significantly different than that first invention many years ago. Or look at e-commerce. Pets.com failed in the early 2000s, and that's because we were afraid of e-commerce. We were afraid of buying things online. But today, it's a very different deal. And wait. COVID was a moment in time where you saw an explosion of innovation, and we actually saw peak innovation at its best. Crocs were like, people were not wearing Crocs, okay, in 2020. And I don't know what happened about people hanging out at home and trying to chill out. They were buying Crocs like crazy. Crocs are huge today. They came back. Or the QR code. Remember, we used to make fun of the QR code. We were like, the QR code is dead. But it reached its peak innovation in 2020. Peloton, home fitness. Or you look at Clubhouse. Remember, Clubhouse was supposed to take over the world? Remember? No one's talking about Clubhouse now. And I think we're in this moment with AI, where we're beginning to see a consumer application of artificial intelligence that's meeting the peak innovation. So again, timing is more important than creativity. How do you achieve peak innovation? How do you achieve it? And I think it means really thinking about all creativity in the context of the past, the present, and the future. Always put it in that context and don't think about creativity in isolation, because your creativity exists in the context of time. Because we as a species, we as a society, understand and evaluate life according to timing. So, when you think about those three things, the cultural climate, think about where we are as a culture. What do we need now? Think about elections, think about politics, think about trade, think about media, all these things that bring us together. Where were we? Where are we going? Think about individual appetite. What do we as a person, our needs? Do we want more belonging? Do we want more status? Do we want fame? How is that changing over time? Because these needs evolve. And then, of course, you have to think about it in the context of technology. A lot of these ideas existed before. How does your idea build on or fit in that long evolution of technology? Is yours a field? Is it too far ahead? Is it a little behind? You need to have a context for how it fits in time. Time is an illusion. Timing is an art. Thank you. My name is Alain, CEO of Sylvain. Check us out.